typically am annoyed when people ask for a wind check. Mostly because when I was in flight school, I wanted to do that. I wanted to get the wind check. And my instructors would always say, if the wind is coming from the left or coming from the right, is that going to change how you're going to handle to get the plane down in the middle of the runway? Which I was never really able to do very well. But they were right. The reality is that if the wind is shifting left to right and all over the place, it doesn't really matter, except if you think you're exceeding a limitation. So let's say your max tailwind landing is 10 knots. And as you were coming in and you got the weather, it was showing an 8-knot tailwind. And you obviously don't want to break the rules of your airline. And so you could just verify, hey, just want to confirm winds are this or what are the winds, just to make sure you're not beating an exceedance, which would then be a problem. You end up landing, exceeding that thing, and then creating a problem, then your airline would be very upset with you. But that excluded, the reality is that when you're coming into land, if it's very windy like it is right now, they are going to be reading off the winds every few seconds because they want to be protected, the controllers do. As far as for if you do mess something up as a pilot, there is no doubt that you have the current winds and you made that decision as a pilot to go. They want to cover themselves, one. And two, they want to be helpful to you. They want you to know, hey, these are the winds, gusting 42, direct 90, you're good to go with that? Okay, cool, we're good to go with that because they're not in control. They don't work at your airline. They may not even be pilots. They may not even know, hey, that's a lot or that's a little. For some people, 40, direct 40 crosswind is a lot. For some people, 15 is a lot. I don't know, in flight school, 10 felt like a million to me. So it's all relative based off your experience, but you hear how much these controllers are talking about the wind. That's usually why I don't ask for a wind check. When I'm coming into land, if the winds are really bad, they'll typically say something to you. If the winds are 5 knots or 7 knots or 10, they're not going to say anything. So what does it really matter? Just keep your plane going down the middle of the runway, and in the middle of the runway, and do whatever it takes to make your plane do that. Which I hate it when instructors would say that to me, so I think it's kind of funny that I'm saying that, but that's just the reality of the situation. Now this jet that we're talking about here is a Challenger 300, which is a $10 million jet, and it's typically not a jet that somebody would start off their career in. Obviously the last couple of years things have been a little bit crazy, so maybe today you're getting people that are having an opportunity to fly that jet that they wouldn't have 5-7 years ago. I never had an opportunity to fly that jet. It's possible because they have very expensive carpet, and my peanut butter and jelly stains would be leaving jelly stains all over the floor, and that carpet is really expensive. I have dropped a bunch of stains on the 747, and I'm able to wipe it up, and you can't tell the difference, but on these nicer jets, everything, literally everything is super expensive, including the carpet. They use some special lightweight something carpet that is really nice. So I never had the opportunity to fly one of these jets, but they are very nice. They typically have more experienced pilots than, let's say, a much smaller aircraft because you start to kind of build your way up as you go. Eventually, it doesn't really matter if you have a bunch of time in a very big or very small jet because it really comes down to decision making like, hey, it's gusting 42 directly from the side. Am I comfortable with that? Yes or no? But this Challenger gets told to line up and wait, which means they're going to fire them off here in just a minute.
Leader 300, runway 36 right at Mike, line up and wait.
And the pilot, you can hear them on the radio, and I always listen for this. I listen to this while I'm flying. I listen to air traffic control, how they talk, what's their cadence like, what's the pitch in their voice. Do they sound anxious? Do they sound calm? And I also listen to that for pilots as well. When I'm listening to pilots that are flying around me, especially when I start to get close to an airport, if I hear something that sounds anxious on the radio, I start to pay more attention who they are and where are they in relation to me, or if they're meshing up radio calls. Where are they in relation to me? Because I want to pay extra attention to that. This guy sounds very calm and competent. Now, I've never flown this plane, but my guess would be based off the way it looks, and I don't know what their limitations are or how it normally handles in a crosswind. But just from my experience, 40 knot crosswind takeoff, even though I've never flown it, I'd probably feel comfortable with it. That being said, if it were a landing, also probably, because you probably have a decent amount of bank with the way the engine and everything are set up on there. On a 7.4, if it was my first week of flying it and you said, oh, we got this 40 knot crosswind and I had never done that before and you had never done that before, I would say like, it'd be better to watch somebody else do that before you try that. And there are other planes that I would not feel comfortable with that, like an Airbus. That's not a plane that I feel comfortable with. mostly just because of the way the joystick is. I don't know how much input in or out. I would have a harder time with something like this. I've flown the same manufacturer of this plane, this Challenger 300. I've flown a similar version of that back in the day. So I would be able to feel comfortable taking something and pushing my limits on it because of the controls and kind of what I think I could probably handle. However, things don't go very well for this guy. Watch this.
Leader 300, wind 260 at 26, gust 42. Fly heading 040, runway 36 right, clear for takeoff.
Heading 040, 36 right, clear for takeoff, leader 300.
Southwest 682, Austin Tower, wind 260 at 27, gust 42, runway 36 left, line up and wait.
That's on wait 36 left, Southwest 682. The ground Delta 541, we're going to stop.
Delta 541, hold position there. Like I said, hold position there. Everybody hold position on my ramp. Everybody on taxiway, Southwest, that's you, stop.
No leader, never stop, not runway.
Southwest 682, hold short 36 left, the table.
We are just slightly over the line, Southwest 682.
Southwest 682, roger. Just hold position.
Holding position, Southwest 682.
It must be nice to have things start to go wrong and then be able to just kind of hit this button and stop, which is what happens in the sim, and essentially what this controller is doing. And my point of saying that is, these things are starting to go wrong for this controller at the airport. And so he's able to just tell everybody, stop moving, so they can really focus on the problem. And the reason I say that is because when you're flying a jet, or a plane of any kind, and things start to go wrong on your plane, you still have to fly your plane while focusing on the problem and not getting overly focused on the problem, because then you could end up doing something like flying your plane into a mountain, which people have done. So it's just kind of interesting, because if I was a controller, I would 100% do exactly what this guy's doing, which is everybody stop moving so I can focus and get the Airport Fire and Rescue and all those people out there. He's doing everything absolutely right. I'm thinking of it from the perspective of the pilot, like, man, that'd be great. Like, if I had this big problem, I could just be like, all right, let's hit the pause button and let's go ahead and focus on this problem, and then we'll come back and talk about the whole flying of the aircraft. I think it's kind of interesting. Now, you heard this Delta pilot here make this call out saying they were going to stop.
The ground Delta 541, we're going to stop.
I'm guessing that's because they saw how that plane was moving around on the runway, and they wanted to just reduce all risk or motion of them being and creating any type of potential chaos. They didn't know what that plane was going to do, where they were going to go, and so they wanted to not be a moving target, where if they're stopped there on the taxiway, the plane, let's say it departed onto the grass and started coming at them, they'd be able to see that plane's not moving, so they could try to stay away from it. I'm guessing is what they're doing. Really courteous, honestly, and a very professional move, because they're basically reducing risk factors for this other pilot. So, classic. Southwest, however, is on the other side of the airport, so they can't see this. They have no idea, and from personal experience of flying from both, you would have no way to know what was going on the other side. However, when you're at an airport and you're moving around, taxiing, getting ready for takeoff or whatever, and you hear a controller tell everybody to stop, you know something big has happened. And in all my years, I've never actually been at a major airport where I heard something like that. I've heard it at smaller airports. I've seen some stuff like that in some places that I've been, which I'm not allowed to say why. But anyway, I haven't heard it at a major airport like this, because you start shutting down a major airport, it's a big deal. And the thing is that's interesting here is you can see on this photo that somebody had uploaded on the internet just how out of control this plane was actually looking. So you can imagine from the perspective of the Delta pilot, they're seeing this is definitely going to be a problem. Now, doing crosswind landing when you're coming in with gust factor is definitely a challenge. There are some challenges to that. I struggled with it in flight school, even though my flight instructor made me go up and do the max demonstrated crosswind in a plane that I was going on, and no other flight instructors were going out. I was the only plane that was up there, and we actually had a flight instructor that, because all the other planes were grounded and it was like a rainy windstorm, wanted to get into the plane to see, like, what is this like? And my instructor made me go up, and she made me do these landings because she was a great pilot and she wanted to challenge my ability